Let's give a massive round of applause for Orlando Wood, who's the Chief Innovation Officer for System 1. Orlando. Oh, he's there.
Gosh, hello everyone. Wonderful to see you. I'm going to talk to you this afternoon about the timeless importance of the show.
Mr. Jones and Mr. Krempler were neighbors. They each had $3,000. With his money, Mr. Jones bought himself a $3,000 car. With his money, Mr. Krempler bought himself a new refrigerator, a new range, a new washer, a new dryer, a record player, 2 new television sets, and a brand new Volkswagen. Now Mr. Jones is faced with that age-old problem, keeping up with the Kremplers.
An ad for the VW Beetle by DDB in the 1960s. We've known for a long time that a TV ad might look different from a print ad, that a print ad might look different from a poster, but that all three can be used to drive growth and profit for your business. But the media landscape today looks very different from the way it did in the 1960s. It's a great deal more complex than it was. And I think as we've been trying to get to grips with this new media landscape, we've started to forget some of the creative principles laid down by Bill Bernbach and others in the creative revolution of the 1960s. Because a golden age of advertising technology has not been a golden age for advertising effectiveness. We have moved from the sort of advertising that you see here on the right, with its narrative, its depth, its dialogue, its sense of place, its people, its metaphor, its humor, towards the sort of advertising you see here on the left, very close up, abstracted, words on the screen telling us what to think and do. Very self-conscious and very rhythmic too. We have moved from showmanship to salesmanship. Both of these schools of advertising are important. Each supports the other. But of the two, it is showmanship that is the more important for profit and for growth. And I'm going to try to explain why with the rest of this presentation. I'm going to start by talking about attention and its relationship with creativity, the two different types of creativity you see here. And I'm going to draw on the work of a brilliant neuropsychologist called Ian McGilchrist. Ian McGilchrist is perhaps the world's expert on brain lateralization and the way that the two halves of the brain pay attention differently to the world. Since the 1960s, we've had this mistaken idea that the two halves of the brain might do different things. But that's not true. As Ian puts it, they do things differently, have different takes on the world, different priorities. So the left hemisphere prioritizes information within localized brain region, whereas the right hemisphere has more branching, more overlap, it's more associative, more white matter that speeds association. And it's more sensitive to noradrenaline, which is about vigilance and putting things into memory. The left hemisphere is more sensitive to dopamine, which is about the getting, anticipating, and seeking of reward. It's very goal-orientated. So you have these two types of attention. The right hemisphere is open to possibility. The left hemisphere tries to narrow things down to a certainty. So if we were to describe the right hemisphere's mode of attention, it would be that It's broad. It's always on. It's vigilant. It sees the whole of any given context. It's particularly open to people, to the living, to other living things. It gives us empathy, so we understand what other people are thinking. It helps us to understand people's gestures, their accents, their movement, their emphasis, all of those things that wrap around the words. And it sees the whole world as a set of connections and relationships. It's open to novelty and contradiction. It could well believe that two opposing thoughts could both be true at the same time, which means, of course, that it understands metaphor and it understands humor. It's the right hemisphere that tells the difference between a joke and a lie. And it is very self-aware and questioning of its time and place in the world. And in fact, it's what gives us our sense of lived time, our sense of depth, our sense of space as well, actually, the space in this room. It also helps us to understand music. So the right hemisphere is open to possibility. The left hemisphere narrows things down to a certainty. Anything that the right hemisphere sees, because it presents the world to us, it passes to the left hemisphere. The left hemisphere is narrow. It's goal-orientated. It likes to abstract things from their context, to break them down into smaller parts. It likes things to be explicit. There are no grey areas here for the left hemisphere. And it categorizes things and people. Oh, it's one of those, it sort of says. And it likes things to be fixed so that they can be repeated. And it thinks sequentially in linear terms. This makes that, makes that. It's very self-absorbed. And obviously quite dogmatic, because it only sees one way of doing things. It's either literal or factual in the way that it thinks. And it likes things, tools with which to manipulate the world. Language, signs and symbols are chief of these. And it can't really appreciate music, only very basic rhythm. So quite different worlds that these two hemispheres bring to bear. These hemispheres are connected in the middle by this bundle of fibers you can see in the diagram called the corpus callosum. It bridges the two hemispheres, but actually its main purpose is to inhibit one hemisphere or the other at any given time. And the left hemisphere is more inhibitory on the right than the right is on the left. And so in our world today, as we're looking ever downward and inward, close up at things, we're starting to see habits of thinking more associated with the left hemisphere come to the fore, not just in culture and society, but also too in advertising. Have a look at this figure for just a moment. The chances are you see it up there as H4 before you see all the E's and the 8's. And that's because the right hemisphere, with its broad beam attention, sees the whole. It sees the wood before it sees all the trees. And so it's what gives us our sense of something happening, perhaps just slightly off stage, this vigilance, this alertness, and it also helps us with sustained and divided attention too. Passing things to the left hemisphere for this very narrow beam attention to be brought to bear. The E's and the 8's here in my example. Well, as we've been spending more and more time in our narrow beam world, we've started to see these changes come through in advertising, but also in culture more broadly. These two types of attention have a lot to tell us about advertising and the way that salesmanship on the left and showmanship advertising work, and the types of business effect and the scale of business effect that you can expect to see as a result. Let's have a look at an ad which I think was created for broad beam attention. Nobody likes to look stupid. And that's what's at the heart of this ad, the human condition. It starts broad to attract a broad audience's attention, and it gradually narrows down to the product and the product benefit. It dramatizes it through the living. Let's have a look at another ad now. This one, I think, is really conceived for narrow beam attention.
Teeth were made to dull. With Colgate Optic White Pro Series toothpaste, you can remove 15 years of stains in 2 weeks. Live life to the brightest. Colgate Optic White.
This ad is quite different. It's very close up. Did you notice? It's like the E's and the 8s in my example. It gives people a reason why they should buy. Helps to make it obvious and easy, because it's targeting the half-interested already. The ad on the right doesn't target the half-interested. It assumes no interest in the brand and product and seeks to create interest in the brand and product to lodge in memory through an emotional appeal. So we have showmanship on the right for broad beam attention, and we have salesmanship on the left for narrow beam attention, both of which have media targeting, of course, implications too. Because it's towards the left, the salesmanship advertising on the left, that we've been drifting. So what, you might say? Just a change in aesthetic style, isn't it? Well, no, actually, it has a real bearing on the ability of your advertising to be noticed, to create an emotional response, and to lodge in memory. At System 1, the company I work at, we measure emotional response to advertising by using this scale, this pictorial scale of faces based on the work of Paul Ekman, a psychologist. We ask people how they feel. They select the face that best tells us how they feel after they've seen an ad. And over many years, we've developed this link between emotional response and business effects, the ability of your advertising to grow your business, your brand, ranging from 1 through to 5 stars, 5 stars being the most effective, the most likely to make your budgets work harder. And so what you find with emotional advertising is that it does two important things. First of all, it improves your base sales, but also it creates pricing power. It enables you to justify your margins. It helps you to create profit because of that. So here you can see an example of a study we conducted with Walk's ROI data, profit ROI, linking these emotional responses to profit ROI. And you can see this relationship, but there is a transformational relationship at the very high end of emotional response. Problem is, when you look at advertising today, as we have, this is a massive audit of over 100,000 ads that we've tested, only 6% of it achieves that transformational level of emotional response. I'm afraid to say it, but I think we are churning out dull. We need a new creative revolution. Because we were here before in the 1950s, when we were also stuck in a salesmanship rut. This is an ad by Rosser Reeves. I don't know how many of you have heard of Rosser Reeves. Rosser Reeves created the unique selling proposition. He believed in the science, nothing wrong with that, but science tends to fix things, so they're unchanging. He would fix a USP for many, many years, and he would use repetition. Here, missing, missing, missing. This ad and these ads were very monotonous, very repetitive, and advertising had found itself in a bit of a reputational crisis by the end of the 1950s, and it was struggling to recruit people to the industry. Then, of course, we got Bill Bernbach, who tapped into a new wave, a new creative wave of thinking. He put the art director and the copywriter together to create something that could be appreciated as a whole. An ad, a campaign here that was fresh, imaginative, that was witty, charming, and that respected the audience's intelligence. These were the principles at the heart of the last creative revolution. Well, he also said that advertising was like artistry. Only art makes you feel, and only feeling makes you act. Well, in the time that remains, I'm going to give you 3 principles that you can take away with you for showmanship advertising. And the first of these is an artistic principle. Let's look at an ad that helps us to understand this.
Hi, Gwen, right? Benji, I live just...
Benji, of course, from...
Yes. Hi. Bit of a weird one, but you haven't been getting any of my parcels, have you?
I love, can't say I have.
It's just I've ordered quite a few things online recently, and with our addresses being so difficult to find, I can see why it might get...
I'll let you know if anything arrives.
Emotions revealed in the human face at a moment of revelation. No, love, can't say I have. An emotional pivot in the ad. This was at the heart of an artistic principle in the 17th century in Italy that came over here to the Netherlands, by the way, called moto e azione. Moto from movere, meaning to move, the stirring of the passions betrayed visibly to the outside world. And azione, bodily actions, poses or expressions marking crucial moments of the story. These artists knew that to create affect, you had to show affect, that to move, you had to show movement, and that if you're going to capture attention, you have to show intention. If this was important in 17th century art, it's critical in advertising today. When you look at the features of advertising that capture attention and generate an emotional response, features that are more likely to play to the left hemisphere's habits of thinking, seen here bottom left, push people away. Unless you're in the buying window right now, or you've been warmed up to the brand, this kind of advertising is inherently uninteresting. It's this advertising here, top right, with its focus on the living, movement, changes in facial expression, a scene unfolding, an understanding of the human condition that drives emotional response and drives attention. Second principle, the fluent device, a repeatedly used character, so you might think here of the M&M's characters, or a repeatedly used scenario, the idea or slogan for which helps to find the magic in the product. For this one, you might think of Snickers, you're not you when you're hungry, as an example. Let's have a look at an example of the second one that's been playing on UK television.
Morning, all. Morning. Brothers, sisters, today a great legacy rests upon your shoulders. Because here, we make more than just tea. We make proper brews. Brews that bring a tear to your eye and warmth to your soul. So go out there and do it for each other. Do it for yourselves, but most of all, do it for Yorkshire! Oh, and the fire drill's Thursday at 3.
Yorkshire tea, where everything's done proper.
Yorkshire tea, where everything's done proper. And they use different celebrities from Yorkshire each time to dramatise the lengths to which they go to give you a perfect cup of tea. Now, let's have a look at the third principle with this ad.
You know, it doesn't matter if you choose left or right because they're both chewy, crunchy, and delicious.
You know, it doesn't matter if you choose left or right because they're both chewy, crunchy, and delicious. You know what else I like?
No, what?
The sound of the snap.
When you bite into it.
Using humour to find the magic in your product. Here, the repetition, humour of repetition, so 2 guys, the 2 bears, and of course, the 2 fingers of the Twix, finding the crunch and the snap. So, humour. These are the 3 things that we could be using more of. Moto e azione, the fluent device, and humour. And particularly so on television, which has a depth of attention and reach that cannot really be matched. If you embrace this sort of advertising, this showmanship advertising, what you find is, with features like these that I've been describing, you're likely to achieve much greater trust, you're likely to achieve effects that left-brain showmanship advertising simply can't, and you're likely to get talked about. You're likely to enter the social consciousness to create fame, salience, mental availability. So whilst there is, of course, a place for salesmanship, great at nudging people towards an app or a website or a purchase if they're in the buying window right now, the half interested. You really need to be thinking about showmanship for creating broad, lasting effects. That means share gain, profit gain, sales gain, all of those things. So to conclude, for growth and profit, your show needs to be more interesting, more arresting, and more entertaining than the content that surrounds you. And TV is a wonderful opportunity to do that. Now, there's a bit of a problem because in the people I speak to in marketing today, they tell me that there is a loss of confidence and experience around in creating this kind of work. And that's why I've teamed up with Sir John Hegarty to create a new creative effectiveness course called Advertising Principles Explained, or APE for short. Why the gorilla? Well, because we believe that advertising too is an endangered species, and we need to do something about it. Here we are coming off the stage together in Cannes. Well, showmanship never hurt anybody. So why not check it out? But for now, I hope you've enjoyed this little reminder of the timeless importance of the show.